Welcome. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning again.
We still just have a couple of more people that are just connecting. And I think people will probably continue to join. So feel free if you'd like to get started. I think we're right on time, and I know people might be on their lunch break, so we don't want to take too much time.
Okay, so should we start? Aaron?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cristina Rosas. I'm a current board member in Safe Passage. I have been since last year, and I'm based in Guatemala. So I'll leave Pati, Pablo, and Aaron to do their introductions as well.
All right. I'll go. So my name's Erin Mooney. If I haven't met you yet, it's wonderful to meet you here. I'm the new executive director of Safe Passage, and I've been on the ground for about 7 months. And but I've been living in Guatemala for just over 5 years, and it's an honor to meet you. I'm late to the game, but I'm here to continue to help Safe Passage to evolve and be the incredible organization that you have come to love.
Then I'll go next. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. My name is Patricia Barneon, Patty, they call me. So I'm the Senior Director of Education. I oversee all of the educational institutions that we have within Safe Passage. And I'm happy to share with you about our reality down here.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Pablo Callejas, and I'm the Senior Director of Student and Community Services. Also very happy to be here. I've been a part of Safe Passage for 13 years, and I feel I know this community a lot, but always surprises me. So I'm very happy to share everything that is new with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Pati, Aaron, and Pablo. So I guess we'll get started on like the meat of everything in this forum, which is a little bit on the political background here in Guatemala over the last 6 months, which I'm sure you're eager to hear about. So as you may have heard, the last 6 months have been filled with political tension in Guatemala. Over the course of the elections, most candidates had been at each other's throats, which is not very new. One of the main candidates, Sandra Torres, a former First Lady, had been vying for the presidency for quite some time, but continues to lose due to her alleged ties to illicit and corrupt political parties. In the midst of the election turmoil, Congressman Bernardo Arévalo, son of former President Juan José Arévalo and first-time candidate, surprised everyone by winning the majority in the first round. His campaign focused on the promise of a new government, one with fresh, prepared professionals in government positions, transparency, and free of theft and corruption. Because as you know, corruption is, well, very prominent in every government in the last, I don't even know how long here in Guatemala. So this anti-corruption and sort of a new government campaign resonated with many Guatemalans, specifically with the young voters. Arévalo won the second round against Sandra Torres with the biggest landslide in Guatemalan's history. However, his victory soon began being questioned. Even before Arévalo's second victory, many candidates and government entities began a campaign to cancel Arévalo's political party, and in doing so, canceling his actual presidential win. His political party is Semilla, and they were trying to cancel Semilla to discredit his victory. After Arévalo was voted president, the Ministerio Público, which is the public ministry, doubled down against Semilla and the Tribunal Supremo Electoral, which are the ones in charge of counting ballots. The prosecutor's office, led by Attorney General Consuelo Porras, hijacked the ballots and began blocking their electoral process. It's then that people took to the streets and the Paro Nacional, or the national blocking, began, which that made the news because it lasted a very long time. The protests reached a peak on October 2nd after an indigenous organization called the 48 Cantones joined the national blockings. The protests lasted until the end of October, so about a month, until they reached a standstill. The end of 2023 was filled with uncertainty, but so far there were no more protests or actions against Arévalo. On January 14th, the day of the presidential inauguration, Congress delayed the ceremony by 9 hours, and that delay led to Guatemalan citizens and the OAS, which is the Organization of American States, to come out and publicly support Bernardo Arévalo. Finally, at midnight, Bernardo Arévalo is finally sworn in as president of Guatemala. So what are his policies? He's a self-described social democrat. His main policy during the election process was to begin an anti-corruption cabinet against corrupt entities in both the public and private sector here in Guatemala. He also wants to focus on security, mainly prison reform, so that convicts don't continue to be involved in illicit activities behind bars, and strengthening our police force to reduce crimes and gang activities. Although he had already stated that he would never be as firm on gangs or gang activities as El Salvador's Nayib Bukele. His educational plan focuses on accessibility and education that molds to the needs of the many communities, indigenous and otherwise, all over the country. Also, he plans on setting aside millions for infrastructure of educational facilities. And financially, his campaign focuses on the wealth distribution and fighting income inequality. Although not much has been said about him directly addressing the overwhelming poverty and malnutrition in Guatemala. Overall, most Guatemalan citizens seem happy with Arévalo's victory. He has yet to outline a clear plan of action for his presidency, but hopefully we'll have more information on his intentions soon enough. So now I'll leave it with Pati or Pablo to do any follow-up points, and with Aaron to see how this affects safe passage.
Something that was really different and very, very important during these turbulent times that we faced was the leadership of the indigenous institutions. As Cristina mentioned, the authorities from the 48 cantones, the Totonicapán, but also different mayors from indigenous municipalities stepped up and really were the leaders of many of the situations that happened to support democracy and to support all the changes. So people from the different communities, the indigenous communities, were really outspoken and they were involved in all this. They did face a lot of judicial attacks from Ministerio Público. They were asking the removal of the general director of the Ministerio Público, and that was something that where they faced the most opposition on, but they remained on pacific resistance, and that is something to highlight. They were always remembering that their movement was peaceful and that they were there until change was to be made. And right now, they finished their pacific resistance, but they are still following events. They are kind of checking on the new government to really see that what they offered, they are committed to achieve it. And there's also opposition to the Arévalo's government. It's a small movement, but there's still opposition, mainly from people who see him as communist. So that is something that you also need to be aware of.
Yes, and also these people that are calling him a communist they describe themselves from the extreme right. So being extreme, not always the best idea. The environment in the country, however, has been positive. There's a lot of people that have a lot of expectations and high expectations on Arévalo's government, and they do see this transition period as something that Guatemala was needing. Of course, it's very difficult because we would need a lot of presidents doing a lot of things right just to be in a place where we can consider ourselves a good spot and a good place. Governments in the past have made so much bad decisions that now we are just suffering from those decisions, from corruption that has been installed and has been systematically used by prior governments until this one. So now the expectation is that Arévalo and his team and the people in other areas that are with Arévalo are doing something forward to the corruption. But that its process is going to be a long process, and we hope to see results sometimes in the near future.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Tina.
Pati. Oh, sorry. Erin?
No, great. Yeah, I'll just add one other thing, and that's we're seeing an unprecedented, really historic unity happening. In order for Arévalo to have won by such a landslide, it took the bringing together of very different political interests here in Guatemala, indigenous communities, indigenous leadership, who are going to be calling for greater investment and greater equity and greater, attention to income and resource distribution disparities that have existed for generations. And then it also brought together business interests and sort of more center, more business focused, and maintaining those alliances over the next 4 years is going to be really, really, really hard. It's, you know, as Pablo said, addressing sort of the deep-seated systemic corruption that's been baked into systems is going to be really, really, really challenging. And so is maintaining these sort of pleasing, not one interest or two interests or three, but a whole, and some of those interests are conflicting. You know, raising minimum wage would be wildly popular, for example, you know, would be wildly popular within, you know, indigenous communities and indigenous leaderships, and probably wildly unpopular within some business interests. So he's going to have a really, really difficult time maintaining the support that has been built. He's put in a very, very difficult situation. And so, you know, as an outsider living in this country, I see hope that has existed, and yeah, hope. That's the best word for it. Hope in Guatemala's administration that has existed for the first time in, well, you know, when was his dad in office? You know, really before the war, and maintaining it and making the progress that is expected or wanted of him is no easy feat, and it's not something that one person alone can do. So it's going to be fascinating. I think we're excited to be where we are, and we're also, you know, as an organization, as you know, the three other of us, you know, Guatemalan citizens on this call, and me as a chosen Guatemalan, I don't think there's any illusion that it's going to be easier, that the work is done. The work is really, really, really just beginning. In terms of what this means for safe passage and sort of how we see the impact of a new administration on safe passage, I think that our mission and our values and our goals as an organization do have some alignment with the stated platform and stated goals of the new administration. They are interested in education and quality of education. One of the first sort of actions that we see coming out of the new leadership and within the Ministry of Education is a really beautiful and very, very explicit bill about school nutrition, no junk food within schools, really a mandate to make sure that we're feeding, that students in Guatemala receive the nutrition that they need and deserve in order to have their brains ready to learn. So a lot of alignment with our values, you know, a focus on poverty and eradicating poverty, a focus on understanding and addressing crime, which we'll talk about more later in this call. We see a lot of alignment, and I think there will be some opportunities for safe passage to engage. I think all NGOs are thinking differently. There has been, you know, a fear and a distrust and an unwillingness and an inability for the NGO sector to even coordinate, if not collaborate with the government at all. And we're feeling kind of hope in a way that we haven't in a while. But all of that to say is they have a huge lift. If something positive, if we do get to the point of collaboration or cooperation, and I think that we will, to a certain degree, we'll be engaging in conversations with different entities within the government and beside the government and with other NGOs about how to engage positively. I think, you know, if we will be holding a very, very large, you know, baby-sized grain of salt in our arms as we do this. I think one thing that's interesting to know and that we sort of have on our radar is that USAID has played an important role in the transition, and they continue to play an important role. They have funding specific to supporting a successful administration transition, and our board member, actually, Ali Welch, is part of that project. She's worked with USAID for quite some time, and that faction of USAID just visited Safe Passage and thinking about, you know, how they can highlight our work as part of administration success. USAID is investing a lot in Guatemala right now. And I think part of it comes from a fear of what's going to happen in your election. I'd say ours, but I've disowned it. Just kidding. Because last time Trump was in office, aid to Central America, to the Northern Triangle, was cut off completely. And it had huge, we lost billions and billions and billions of dollars in USAID funding and active projects that were just ended from one day to the next. And so I think there is I see from what I hear from colleagues and friends within and around USAID that they're trying to move funds before the election, just in case. And so we're trying to get ahead of that and have conversations and see if there's an alignment that can support our work over the next year. Yeah, hopeful, but skeptical. It's a big hill to climb, and the issues that Safe Passage works in are systemic. Government, in order to solve them, in order for Safe Passage to not need to be doing the exact same thing we're doing now, 30 years from now, there need to be some systemic fix. There needs to be investment and involvement from the municipality, from the government of Guatemala. I think we feel like that's possible for the first time ever, and we're not holding our breath.
Yeah, I think Aaron narrowed it down that for the most part, we're all hopeful but skeptical. And Pati, I don't know if you wanted to add something else.
No, I think we have given the broader picture of what has happened in the past months.
Okay, perfect. So now Pablo is going to explain a little bit on the current situation in Zone 3 and the security around the area.
Yes, thank you, Cristina. So since the end of the last year, the levels of violence in the community have been escalating. With the current political situation and geopolitical situation in El Salvador, with Nayib's Bukele strict anti-gangs policies, a lot of gang leaders have migrated to Guatemala, and they have been locating into our community in the communities that we serve. And this has affected us and has resulted in conflicts between these new gang leaders, and trafficking drug lords that were already nearby us. So it's kind of a territory fight. It's kind of a turf fight that they have been having since last year, and we've seen a lot of violence and a lot of people getting killed around us. This El Salvadorian gang members have started to take leadership between their organization, and in this quest for control of territory in the sector, the death of people living in the community surrounding the landfill has increased, and we have seen every time more and more of our students having family or cousins or friends that have been victims of that violence and this episodes of violence that have been happening around us. But with this new leadership trying to install in our country, this is also what the risk of recruitment of children and adolescents at levels that we haven't seen before. We are looking now that gang leaders are trying to recruit 11 years old, 12-year-olds, 13 years old, including now gang leaders are around 13 and 14 years old, and they're looking for friends that are the same age or peers that are the same age to start building this new gang or this structure that will control everything that is happening around us. So in this quest for leadership around the community, things have been escalating, violence has been escalating, and we've seen a lot of violence victims lately. This is something that we haven't seen in the past, at least at this levels. We always have, or maybe we got used to violence in this place. We know that we work with at aid risk population, but the levels of violence have been pretty high this late months. Families have been forced to eviction, and entire families have left this area just to try to survive and try to get away of that violence. We have now also, we've heard about girls getting kidnapped, about girls getting recruited also for being the partners, the wives, or I don't even know how to call it, but the partners of the gang members now and the gang leaders. So we are in a very risky situation. And if you look at this in the past, every time the government has some type of transition, violence levels always rise, always increase. And this is related also with the, trying to make a point, trying to stand on to new leadership, not only with the gangs, but also in the country. So that's why it's been affecting us somehow over here. Last week, we were closed for 4 days straight because the violent situation was very tough for us, and we could not assure the security of our students, and we were not able to secure to be confident that we all will be safe, including staff members. So we had to be closed for 4 days. And then with this amount of violence, we cannot give the services that we are looking for our students, and for over 550 students that we have now, we cannot give the benefits that we give. We cannot give the quality educations that we want to give to our students because of this situation that it's coming around us. So in this, since the beginning of the year, violence levels have been extremely high, and this has affected us a lot, us, the staff members, and also the families and students that we serve.
And so I would just add, in terms of what we're doing, we're working really hard, one, to modify safety planning and protocol for the day-to-day, the immediate response, and we're assessing our current security capacity and what we need to do in order to improve that. Secondly, we're looking to engage more with government. We're trying to get meetings with the Ministry of Gobernación that sort of oversees the government's response. We know that Safe Passage is doing some of the most important crime prevention work. All of what we do gives students and families the option to say no, the option to not have to make the families in our community have 2 really bad options. It's work in the garbage dump or join the gangs. And without organizations like Safe Passage and our partners, it's hard to move beyond that. So we know that we play an important role in crime and violence prevention, and that prevention has to be part of the government's response. That, whatever the police and anti-crime responses, NGOs and other, there has to be public services. Crime and gangs particularly always go hand in hand with lack of economic opportunity. You don't see gangs in communities that have real viable economic opportunities for their populace. So we're working with our partners in the community, like Creamos and Planting Seeds, and an organization called Iniciativa and others, and looking at bringing more expertise and more tools, both to our staff, acknowledging and beginning to address the fact that we work in a gang impacted and gang controlled community. We can't wait for the sort of the violence to impact us. We need to build our toolkit and our response. And so I've been in conversations with an international gang prevention expert who grew up in LA but has done remediation work all through Latin America as well as LA, which is interesting that the gangs that we're seeing here in Guatemala started in LA, were deported to we're looking at bringing training both for staff and eventually for community members. There's a lot that we can do together intentionally to build sort of resiliency and remediation factors that help keep gang involvement not at bay. I don't think that we'll ever be in a context that there are no gangs, but we can work harder and more intentionally and strategically to build in our student population and our community through the other organizations that we work with more capacity and tools and skills to find and secure other opportunities.
So thank you, Paulo and Erin. So now I think we have a good amount of time for questions. So if any of you have any questions for any of us, please let us know.
Jen.
Jen, yes.
Hola.
Hola.
Obviously, with all the concerns around safety for staff and students, I'm imagining that there's concern around volunteers as well. So do you anticipate this impacting the volunteer program at all?
Great question. We're talking a lot about that right now. We had, as things were beginning to come to a head, we had a support team on the ground. The community is really interesting because it's broken down into smaller community subsets. We have had no incidences around the colegio, around our primary and secondary school site. The incidences and the concern have been around our high school age site and our early childhood site. So we have, we've limited visiting those sites and are really upping safety protocol. We still, at this point, feel things got heated last week. Not part of it was gang related, but then part of it was police and military response. And so that's why we shut school, because the police and the military were actively responding and searching, and for our students that gets more dangerous. We still feel like it's settled down after last week. We're monitoring it very carefully. We're looking at getting more very current intel to be able to anticipate and spikes. We feel like we can keep staff and visitors safe, but with a contained schedule. We're not having visitors go to our high school site right now because the majority of shootings have happened in front of it. And entering and exiting El Jardín, we're being careful. We're only going in our own vehicles, which are well known, and we have a level of protection because of our history and trust in the community. But we are monitoring it, and if it gets worse and we continue to see things escalate or spiral, then we may have to change our mind about visitors. But at this point, we feel like we have the capacity to keep folks safe.
Also, this has required, I'm sorry, just a quick thing. It has required that our teachers pay more attention of the stories that the students are telling, and also address all the social emotional distress that this past week had provoked in the students. So we are aware that our students have been affected by this, and we are trying to address and help them be resilient after what they lived. Sorry, Tom?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm new to the group, but I was sort of curious as to, to the extent that the president is going to try to sort of combat corruption that's sort of entrenched, what's the ability from like legislative side for him to get things done? Like, is there like a coalition that allows things to go through? Because I assume that the government, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume that the government is sort of like similar to the US, but maybe I'm wrong, and he has a greater level of authority to do things.
He started out with a coalition in Congress, is the same that happens in the US. And they have been working and moving some initiatives and vote on them. Right now, that coalition seems to be in crisis. So this week, they are trying to rebuild forces because, as I was sharing before, there's opposition. There are a lot of the corrupt actors who were re-elected into Congress. So there's a struggle there, and their power has been limited. So right now, this week, they're trying to rebuild that coalition that they had. Hopefully, they will keep on going forward. So far in this 2 months that they have been in office, the legislator were able to pass some of the bills. For example, something simple around credit cards to limit taxes and do some things to benefit the country. So we'll see how that goes on.
There's also another thing happening with the legislation that we might not seen before, and is that there are a lot of people in the Congreso and as congressmen that are using social media to discuss about laws, to discuss about things that are happening inside the Congress. So they are using Instagram, they are using Facebook Live, they're doing TikTok about legislation, about things that are happening. And there are a lot of congressmen that are they're going to hospitals and they're talking about, well, how do you spend the money of the people? This happened, I think it was last week. This congresswoman was at a national hospital asking about the money that has been spent on the hospital, because she has like this huge bill of a lot of things, and she asked about painting, and they charge around 50,000 quetzales. That is around how much, like how many dollars do you think it is? So like $5,000, for example, to paint a wall, and the wall wasn't even painted. So they're starting to try to be transparent about what they're doing, and to do it with social media, with short videos, with reels about what's happening. So this is something that we haven't seen before, and now you get a lot of insight, quote unquote, about what's happening in the Congress with this new information, and with this people doing trying to be transparent about it.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Jen Bush. I had a quick question, probably mostly for Pablo. when you talk about the new gang activity that's coming in, my understanding is that the existing gang structure there has always really respected safe passage and valued its presence there. And so is there a concern that the new group and the new gangs or the new ones that are forming, that there's work that has to be done directly with them, or kind of, if this is sort of a new norm, how does safe passage become important to these new folks?
Thank you for the question. I think that we can start talking about how Safe Passage is turning 25 years this year of being in the community, of serving the community. So this 25 years, we have built a relationship with the community, and the community has respected us because they know that we are here for them, that we are working for them, and that we want them to improve. We want them and their kids to be as good as they could be. And now the problem is that we have built this relationship. We have built community with them. But since the new leaders are not from this community, the new leaders are from other countries, from El Salvador specifically, they do not know all the history and all the years of service that we have for the community that we serve. So, you know, and put it in simple terms, they do not care about us. They do not care about what we're doing or what we've done in this past 25 years. Because they just want to take territory, and as cruel as they can be, as much as they will be respected for what they do. So this puts us in a difficult position, but still there's a lot of families and there's a lot of community members that respect us, that care for us, and that are willing to you know, to maybe not to fight with us, but to stand with us when the time has come. There's a lot of people that has Safe Passage really close to their hearts, and I think that means a lot, because we also have grown with this community for this past 25 years, and we're not gonna let that something like this ends up the relationship that we have with our community. We just have to be a little bit more careful, or a little bit more proactive in things that we do. And we are preventing violence to happen. We are preventing gangs to keep getting bigger by working with our students and with our kids and our teens. So this is something that has moved us. But I think that we all agree, and we are all confident in the work that we do, and that this work that we do is the best for the community that we serve.
Just to add to that, Jen, I mean, that's one of the things that we're looking at. One of the reasons that we want to work with Luis Rodriguez is that he has a history of doing that, of doing some negotiation with both gang leaders and government in different regions. And yes, we do have that fear that, you know, the new gang leaders coming in from out of the community don't have the same ties and respect, unless, you know, and yeah, that is a fear, and figuring out how to navigate it. I mean, we're in a difficult position of really having to thread a needle. Like, we know that we have gang involved families, and if it were perceived that we were working or coordinating directly with police, who are, you know, also have a very troubled reputation in the community for many valid reasons. As you know, this is a country that has experienced war and severe violence against low income and indigenous communities, which describes the community that we work in. So navigating that between, you know, how do we create a dialogue, or at least an understanding through mediators or through intermediaries with both gang leadership to hopefully manage to stay off their radar and some sort of agreement of protection for our staff and students, as well, you know, same thing on the police side. How do we get the information that we need, coordinate in a way, but that doesn't put us then on the gang leaders' radar for having coordinated with a police response. So we have to thread that needle, and it's complicated, but that's the work that we're doing now.
Thank you.
That speaks to my, oh, sorry. That speaks to my question about trust with the military and the police and where they stand, and yeah, given the history, and are they, I mean, I'm sure it's not just one voice, but where do they stand in relationship to the government, the current government, and then also in the community and with Safe Passage? Is there trust in their capacity to enhance security? And
I'll give a short answer and then let somebody give a long answer. No, there's a lot of trust building to do. There's a long history of police violence and corruption and exploitation and abuse. And so no, there is not trust. By and large, we are seeing this really interesting phenomenon though of, as we ask kids what they want to be when they grow up, more and more are saying police and military. And we think it has something to do with the sort of higher police and military presence. So maybe some of that trust building is happening, good or bad. But no, there is work to be done there. And I'll let somebody else expand.
I mean, did the
Yeah.
military support Arévalo? Or did the
military were really, they did support transition. They did not go on to the other side trying to block Arévalo's getting into office. But also for this community, as you know, as Erin was mentioning, police they see them as a threat, not as a protector. But this time there were some actions that police took that some of the kids felt that gave them safety and protection from what was going on in the community, in this specific community. If you have been here, you know there are doors that go into those communities. Police came in and removed those doors, so the corridors were really open, and police presence was within this community. And some of the students, when they were telling their stories this week, they felt protected. They felt that it was a good measure so they could be safer. We still have students that haven't come back, either because of they flee away from the city and they haven't come back, or they are still in hiding because they have been threatened by the Mara and they have not been able to leave home and come. So there was also a fire that was started by the gang members, and those houses, most of them were empty because the gang members came a few days before requesting them to evict and leave their homes. And then on one of the days that was really a lot of tension between them and the police, they set those houses on fire. So it has been difficult, and it's a difficult relationship. When we were celebrating Hanley's birthday and kids were talking about what their dreams were in the future, yes, there were some students saying they want to be police officers because they want to protect their families. So that is something that you can see that there's a shift. Not necessarily all of them see the police or the military as the enemy.
Thank you.
What else, you guys? We've thrown a lot at you. What questions do you have?
Carolyn or Carol, sorry. Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks, just realized that. Thank you. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but given that you've already experienced having to be shut down the campus for several days and miss school, do you have some thoughts around backup plans if you're continuing to have to shut school down on occasions in terms of being able to continue some form of education?
Yes, thank you. And we learned a lot from the pandemic.
Right.
So we do have a backup plan, for example, for the students who haven't been able to come back because they are in hiding for safety reasons. We do have study guides that we can send home with neighbors and with relatives, and they can work from home. Of course, for kids, being in school is really important. We thought, because we reopened on Friday, Thursday was a teacher formation day. So on Friday, when we reopened the school, we thought our students were not coming back in full. And you know, the teenagers were here almost in full. The ones who were not there were the little ones, because parents were still afraid of bringing them into. And we know that for students, being in school is a safe place, and they love being here. So we're trying to keep it open as much as we can. If not, we do have our study guides and WhatsApp, because online teaching is not an option in this community, but we do have other means of communication, not with everybody, but with a good bunch of families do have WhatsApp, and we can arrange communication through that. So that is what we have as a backup plan right now.
That's great, Patty. And you're right, having gone through the pandemic, you've come up with tools and techniques. It's unfortunate you're going to have to deploy them again, but it's great that you can deploy them again. And also congratulations on the fact that you've had so many families and children feel safe and wanting to be back in that environment last Friday.
And just to complement a little bit more on that question, also on the health side, for the pandemic, we developed a telemedicine program and a telepsychology program. So we can also serve our students and maintain them as healthy as possible. We made some connections with local drugstores, and if our kids need medicine, they can go to the drugstore. We'll pay for that later. And if they have symptoms, then our doctor or one of our nurses will connect them or contact them and do the whole evaluation, diagnose, and intervention program. And also with mental health, our psychologists are ready to deploy that program if needed.
Again, that's great that you've got some tested methods from a more trying time, and yet they're helping you out at this point in time too.
I see that.
Oh, so I was gonna say, is there anything people can be doing that are not nearby you in Guatemala that would be helpful given this situation?
That's exactly my question as well.
That's a great question. As always, we're sort of having to respond to the situation that frankly we didn't budget for. As we look at our security offerings right now, as we look at our, security planning, as we think about, trying to get intel, as we think about trying to bring down experts or bring up experts. I'm sorry to oversimplify it, but the short answer is continue to support our work in the way that you can and in a way that is meaningful for you, because, these are things that in this constantly changing world, we hadn't budgeted for this additional crisis. Such is life. And yeah, I mean, that's really the main way as we think about our funding model, we're asking donors who can to think about making monthly donations over annual or de vez en cuando donations, because having a higher monthly income that we can sort of count on allows us to be a little bit more flexible and nimble in case of emergencies, and to understand sort of to be, I mean, I'm tired of this word, but to be more sustainable. Monthly donations really help us build a foundation of informed decision making and prioritizing that makes our work better. Stay tuned, stay connected. I know some of you on this call recently visited or plan to visit, and let's just stay in discussion around that. As I said, I think that we can do it safely and well. And if that changes, we will be talking about it. I think that the reason we got through the government transition, and that Arévalo's party wasn't canceled and the election wasn't canceled, was because of international attention. I think if there had been less attention, I think that it could have gone differently. So we're so grateful that so many people were interested in this conversation, because we need the international community's attention on Guatemala right now in order to maintain the democracy that is being built. What would others say about ways to support?
Yeah, I mean, I would say always just, and I think, so many of you continue to do this for us, but just sharing our story and our message and our work within your own networks, because that's the way we continue to grow our community and our supporters and how we make our work sustainable.
Yeah. I see our board member, Ali Welch, and currently for the administrative transition project. Ali, do you have any insight to add or any thoughts?
Thanks, Erin, and hi everyone. Sorry, I'm not on video, and Erin, you cut out a little bit. I think it's my internet here in rural Vermont. No, I think just as everybody said, continuing to raise awareness about the great work Safe Passage is doing, identifying new donors. And one thing, when I met with Erin last month, looking at ways to get more funds from USAID and just to get more attention to provide the additional funding, and support the team needs to get through this year, especially with the challenges. But I really appreciate this opportunity. I think it's great, and look forward to having more opportunities to hear from you all.
Thank you, Ali. We're really blessed with a very smart and strategic board of directors, and Ali is a great example of that. Yeah.
I think Ada?
Ida, yeah. So you earlier in the discussion made a really helpful link between the American election and what's happening in Guatemala. So I would just say another way to support Safe Passage is to work on the election here that's coming up. So just to put in a plug for that.
Agreed. Thank you. we're so grateful that everybody took the time to be on this call, that you care, I think there are many, many, many years, if I count up the faces on this call and the support and generosity and love that you have shown Safe Passage. We're so grateful for your ongoing love, care, support, and interest. And it's a strange world that we live in. And we're very grateful for such an incredible community of supporters. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of you as well. As someone from Guatemala, I'm honestly overwhelmed by all of the support of people that, you might not have a direct connection to the country, but you guys are here and you want to be involved and knowledgeable about what's going on. So really, I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you for taking the time. We wish everyone a wonderful day, and thank you for your love and support of our work in Guatemala.
Thank
you
you
so
all.
much, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.